cruising on down Mount Rose Highway from Mount Rose Ski Tahoe back in here to Reno for vlog 258. I have today managed to do a HIIT workout at the gym. Shout out to Sweat Fitness in South Reno. And hit the slopes for a brief stint at Mount Rose. Now I'm going to go play, of course, some poker for this vlog. I feel like I have to do one more activity to kind of hit for the cycle on this day. Got to figure out what that is. Darts won't count. I acknowledge that. Darts will not count, though I am very much looking forward to being a guy that has a dartboard in his living room because I'll be moving into a house here soon, hopefully very soon. Anyway, as has kind of become tradition on this vlog, I'm going to tell you a little bit about some of the sessions I played outside of the once per week vlogged session coming up momentarily as we head into Peppermill on another beautiful day that the casino is open. It was a week of coolers at Peppermill Reno, and I don't just mean in the gift shop. The previous week was me losing aces versus queens, a hand that I mentioned in the beginning of the last vlog. This time, on the session before the one I would vlog, it was set over set. I was then thankful that I ran it twice in a pot just under $2,000 when I flopped top two with Jack 8 of spades. And a guy manages to call off his remaining $700 with Jack 10. And then, of course, went on to hit his 10 on the river, ultimately losing about $1,600 on a pretty brutal session. As for this day, I'd get into the casino at about 1 p.m. to find two full 5-10 games. I'd sit down on table one, and I would immediately do something that always makes me feel good when I can do it correctly, and that is check, fold, top pair, king kicker. In this case, we got a monotone red flop, just the wrong suit for my king jack of diamonds, and another guy named Ben bet $100, and vlog favorite Crazy Joe had flopped the absolute nuts, and he won that pot but didn't get $1 out of me post-flop. That was followed by me doing a very similar thing, though I didn't feel nearly as good, when I decided to bet fold king-queen on a king-high flop against a player who had raised big, and due to the fact I did not know him at all, I decided to just give it up and wait for a better spot, which would come when I would table change off of table 1 into the game on table 5. I was the first on the list to do that. Unfortunately, a grinder who had been there longer than me clearly got the idea to do it because I also did it, so my efforts to get away from him were unsuccessful as he followed me over to table 5. Anyway, I lose the first 3 pots at the new table and was stuck several hundred right out of the gate. We'd see some big pots in the game, but I couldn't get involved with any of them until this hand. The hijack opens to 35, and I have kings on the button and make it 125. Folds back around, and he makes the call. So with 265 in the pot, we get a queen, 10 deuce, all diamond flop, and he checks. I bet 175 here, looking to get as much money in here as I can. The hijack thinks about it for a second, before ultimately jamming all in for about $600 in this spot. With the king of diamonds in my hand, it's an obvious snap call. I show my hand to shoot video for the vlog, and he announces that his pair and his draw are both no good. Now, despite that, I am still capable of finding ways to lose in spots like this, but thankfully in this case that doesn't happen. As we run it twice, I hold on both boards and I scoop a $1,450 pot. We would experience the very rare phenomenon of playing back-to-back hands against the same opponent, and the bizarre feeling of realizing that I don't have the only Model 3 with Golden Knights plates on the property anymore. Anyway, I'd won the last hand, obviously, as you just saw, so I'm in the rock with the winner's straddle in effect. Aforementioned opponent makes it $35, and I give him action with 8-5 of spades, with the grinder who limped under the gun calling as well. Some people might be inclined to think that since he just got felted and had rebought, that he'd be on tilt. But I know this guy well. He's a very successful businessman, and he is not the kind of guy that goes on tilt. I don't think I've ever seen him go on tilt. So I had to keep that in mind. With 105 in, we get a flop of ace, ace-7, 2 spades, giving me a flush draw. Under the gun checks. Low jack checks, and with a pretty weak flush draw, all things considered, and a paired board not making things any more appealing, I check this one back. On the turn, I drill the flush. Under the gun bets out for $30 here, and the low jack makes the call. I make it an even 100. First player folds instantly, but the low jack, who just played the last hand against me, makes the call. So with 335 in, the river is an offsuit king. He checks, and I felt that I had the green light to go pretty big here. I make it 200, knowing that he's capable of slow playing an ace in spots like this, trying to get me to bet it. Without a second thought, he does not call my bet, but jams all in for what was ultimately $165 more. Now, I don't know everything about every player in the player pool, but I think my knowledge of the pool as a whole is pretty much as good as anyone's out there. And this is one of those guys that I can guarantee you, like most opponents, is not going to be check raising his entire stack in a spot where it's clear that I pretty much have to call the vast majority of the time without a full house. They might lead out without a full house, but to check raise the river over a $200 bet like this and to not have a monster is unheard of. So while I obviously hate the fact that it is only going to cost me $165 more, I just know that I'm beat. So I fold the hand, and as you can see, it was a brutal river for me with him showing pocket kings for a rivered boat. So I get kings one hand, he gets them the next hand. Hands didn't exactly play out the same way, but the player with kings wins in both spots. And what looked to be hopes of turning this into a really big day were squashed by the river suck out. It is a leg up experience.
Hello there.
Are these pants like you don't break these out very often? These are for a special occasion.
Super special occasion. Only for the Poker Palooza.
And when you combine it with the Royal Flush Club membership necklace, courtesy of Bugsy,
Yes.
the CEO, your styling beyond belief.
Well, he's the CEO, but I am the very important person.
The CEO is back. The Royal Flush Club at it again.
I'm back,
There you go.
and I'm never leaving.
Look at that playing. Folds back to me in the hijack, and I get dealt the premium holding of Jack 7 of clubs and decide to make it 30. Big blind here, my only caller in the hand. So with 70 in, we get a flop of Ace 7-8 Rainbow 1 club. He checks, and I just check this one back here with bottom pair. Turn is the 10 of spades. And now he bets out for 30 from the big blind in this spot. With a pair, a draw, and a bit of a plan here, I make the call. So with 130 in, the river is an ace, and now he checks. I need to turn this pair into a bluff to get him off of an 8 or a 10 here. So I slide in 100. I felt pretty confident he would give this some thought, but fortunately for me, he turns over the 8-6 before tossing it into the muck. I would switch seats, but unfortunately our game would then be down a man after a straight over straight cooler resulted in it being shorthanded for a little bit after that. I'd crush a shrimp burrito, because those things are so damn good, and we get James, the actual professor, entering the game. He'd proceed to get involved in this hand, raising to 50. Low jack calls, and the cutoff defends the rock. I make the call on the button with king, queen of spades. Now with 205 in, we go 4 ways to ace, deuce, deuce, 2 spades, giving me the nut flush draw. To my astonishment, nobody bets. Now, on an unpaired board, I'd be pretty likely to fire here. But against 3 opponents, I decide just to check this one back. The turn rolls off an offsuit 9. Now, the original raiser, middle position 1, bets 80. The other 2 guys fold, so I certainly am not going to be folding here. and I make the call. So with 365 in, the river is the 3 of spades, and I make the flush. He checks. After some thought, I decide on betting out for 150. And in the moment, right after I slid those chips in, I knew that was too big of a bet. Because it was pretty clear that he didn't have an ace, as he checked the flop. So to get him to pay off with jacks here, which based on what I block is the most likely thing, I really should have made a smaller bet on an ace-high board. He mucks, and I stack the chips, now 1 for 2 on the day with spade flushes. This is a mid-session update. On this, the day of O.J. Simpson's death, I remain unsure about who fewer people believe, him or Mike Postle. But I know this. I am not interested in hearing from Mike Postle until Mike Postle has decided he finally wants to come clean. Until that day comes, I don't give a damn what he has to say. Speaking of having big flush draws in multi-way pots, see Exhibit B in this next hand. I have Jack 10 of diamonds and call a raise from the big blind in what would be a 5-way pot. With 180 in, the flop is Ace of diamonds, King of diamonds, Deuce of hearts, giving me a royal flush draw. But since I'm first to act, I just check this. Once again, something that I never thought would happen does happen, and that is that nobody bets. Turn is the 5 of hearts. I have only made 1 royal flush in my life, and I think that I am in the running for setting the record of most royal draws down in flames without improving whatsoever. Forget hitting the royal itself. I am extremely good at not hitting any of my outs. You know, it's a talent. Not wanting to let this happen this time, I figured that 2 barrels were potentially in order, depending on how the first one went. I bet 100. Player on my left, under the gun, calls, but all 3 other players go out. So, with 380 in, we go heads up to the river, which comes the king of clubs. So I brick out, but the good news is, hearts have also missed. But there are now going to be multiple hands drawing to both these 2 flush draws that I still can't beat. So, I have to wager. I make it 160. It's definitely possible that that was not the proper amount, because an ace is probably calling anyway. And I beat some of his hands that have missed draws in this spot as well, so probably could have gotten away with actually going a little smaller on that bluff, but it's kind of hard to actually say that with full conviction, because in this case, it works perfectly. Over the next hour of play, I'd win 2 more small pots and lose 2 more small pots, and since the quality of the game wasn't getting any better, I would elect to just rack up and book the win. All right, wrapping up the session. Kind of an interesting day. I mean, how about those back-to-back hands with the pocket kings and then the 8-5 suited of all hands that results in me having a hammerlock on that particular hand up until that king hit the river. I guess you could have hit an ace as well, but either way, could have been a really good session. Instead, I only end up winning back $637 of the $1,600 I managed to lose yesterday. So not the ideal scenario. Thankfully, I did not run as bad as I did yesterday. Otherwise, it could have been really ugly on consecutive outings here at the Peppermill. If you're new to this channel and are here for some cash game action, this is obviously the place to go. I can't imagine you're going to find better video of said cash games on too many of the vlogs. Hit those like and subscribe buttons. I try to do 1 vlog per week on this channel. Usually you'll see it drop in your feed 4 p.m. Pacific time on Mondays. All right, gym, skiing, poker, and find a way to hit the cycle.